welcome back to the channel and good morning. We are in the Hellcat heading up to Denver. I'm going to Hayden's shop. I had him weld the FD manifold. It is finished. It took him like a week and everything looks really, really good. So going up to Denver to pick that up, just kind of enjoy the day. It's a pretty nice day out today, and I'll finally have the FD manifold. When I get back, I can throw it on, throw the turbo on, and that will be 100% ready to go. Then I can start measuring stuff so I can make the intake manifold. So I am designing a new intake manifold. I had the Elite manifold, but I just want to change it up, do something different. I didn't really like how far over the throttle body was, and I really don't want to run a front mount anymore. We're almost to Hayden's. It was a very long drive up here. There was like a wreck on the highway, so it took a little bit longer than I thought, but I can't wait to see the FD manifold. We finished welding up the FD manifold, and the welds on this thing are just super nice compared to, shit, my welds were horrible. But how do you like welding it, man?
It was pretty easy, honestly. I mean, there's a couple spots were tricky, but the main thing was just trying to make sure that, like, you always play a game of like shrinkage with the stainless, right? So like I welded up most of it, and then I knew I had to cut one of the runners off. But like when I cut one of the runners off, like it's still, even though it's what welded all in place, it's still distorted. So I was like, oh, hopefully it doesn't distort too bad. It didn't distort that bad, so yeah, it wasn't too bad actually. Just cutting the wastegate entries was kind of the hardest thing, really. That was it. So.
Yeah, but it looks really good. So I can't wait to mount this on the car later tonight and finally have a turbo manifold for the FD after all these months of messing with this thing.
Finally be able to make some brap brap noises.
Yeah, I mean it'll be nice.
So that thing just like your like a drift car, or just like a fun car, or just
a street car?
Okay.
Street, yeah.
Cool.
It's a 95, like 200 of them were made, so I don't think I want to wreck it.
Yeah, you probably don't want to go take that out drifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, some jerk like me drifting and then like run into you for some reason.
The funny thing is I won't drift it, and then I'll be sitting on a light and someone will nail me or something crazy like that.
Stupid. That's how it always goes, dude.
I had to drive through downtown Denver just to see if it was as bad as everybody was saying it was near the Capitol, and I must say it is bad. It looks like Haiti almost. I mean, I'm just gonna show you guys some stuff, but it's just crazy that it's this bad. Even the windows on the Capitol are boarded up. And look at all the tagging. Slums over here, look at all these tents. This is crazy how many tents are over here. Look how dirty it is. I mean, just garbage everywhere. Gross. I'm back at my shop and the FD manifold is ready to go on. One thing I'm gonna do to this before I permanently mount it on, I'm just gonna pretty much put it on with the gaskets with the turbo, make sure everything is still good to go with the wastegates as well. But the welding on it is just so much nicer than when I welded the one that I did. I don't even know where it's, see, mine's down here, and the welds aren't horrible, but they're definitely not this good. So I did make the jig, which he said it was really nice because of copper heatsink, and I had copper heat sinks for the wastegates. The reason I did that was because I didn't want anything to distort. Also, the collector flange up here had a copper heatsink, so everything should be good to go. So let's throw this on and just check it out and put the EFR back on it and finally have a turbo manifold. But what I'm gonna do with this is actually Cerakote it afterwards, so I'll be doing that in a later episode just so everything is nice and ready, nice and coated, and looks consistently the same. This thing it took a long time to get the design down right, get everything how I wanted it, get the collectors made. These T4 collectors, I actually designed them, made them, as well as the lower flanges right there, as well as my oil metering block off plate and the turbo return. So everything on this side of the engine, pretty much I designed and made, and I'm really thankful that Hayden welded this manifold up because it just came out on point. I can't wait to get this thing ceramic coated, and then after it is, I will be able to 100% button this thing up. Another reason why I wanted to actually get this engine back together or get the turbo manifold back on the engine is because I'm doing a special intake manifold. So it's pretty hot in here, but I have gotten to this point where I'm just 100% fed up with front mount intercoolers or V-mount intercoolers. They're just really inefficient. They don't, then you're from the intercooler to your intake manifold. Your intake manifold, it's all hot. It's all getting heat soaked by the engine. So I'm going to resolve this issue. If you are on my Instagram, you pretty much already know what I'm talking about. I'm doing a CRV or a K-series intake manifold the same way. So it will reduce intake air temps, which for FDs is a very big thing because they're already generating so much pressure, so much heat to just drive without adding 25, 30 pounds of boost on top of it and then running it through an intercooler that is really not dropping down the ambient air intake air temps very much. So I'm also needing to have this made. So when I have the new water pump flange made, actually I'm not going to run a water pump, I'm going to run an electric water pump. But once I get the new flange made and the intake manifold, all the flanges made, I'll put all that back together. I need to pull this engine out. As I've said in other episodes, some birds made a nest inside the transmission and I don't really want to leave that there. So I'm going to pull it apart, inspect it. Before, when this thing made 480 horsepower, didn't give me any signs for me to want to rebuild it. So hopefully I could reach 600 on this engine. It is a fully built 13B. And I just really like the design of my intake or my exhaust manifold because there wasn't another bottom mount manifold like this. So the reason I did end up making this manifold how it is and where the turbo sits how it is the manifold is equal length. The turbo sits down low, which lowers the center of gravity. There isn't so much weight on top up here, which really doesn't matter. Rotaries are pretty light, but then instead of having a 90-degree bend directly off your downpipe, you have really not any bends. I'm going to use a lot of pie cuts. There's all my pie cuts right there. I have my own flange that I designed for the 9180 EFR, and it's just coming together. So it is a slow process, having parts made, sending the files off, getting the parts back, doing this, welding them up, or having somebody else weld them up, and it's just a long process. So what I'm going to do next, most likely, I'll design the intake manifold. I'm going to have that in this episode because a lot of people really have been interested in that. I do a lot of Solidworks, I do a lot of CAD, I know the ins and outs of it, and I think a lot of people are pretty interested in it. So what I'm going to do now is measure some things off of here, then go home, use Solidworks and design the intake manifold and bring you guys along for the designing process, which will just be a time lapse and it's going to take, a couple hours to do. So I'm really happy that this is done and we have the wastegates located where they are and it's just all coming together. been doing SolidWorks on the FD intake manifold for a very long time now. It's probably been like 5 hours. It takes a lot of thought to try to get this exactly how I want it. Since I'm doing it in billet, and since I'm doing a bunch of other stuff on it, it just, and since there's limited room, if you guys know rotaries, both the intake and exhaust ports are on the same side, kind of like the old 240Z, L24s, L26s, L28s. A lot of the older engines, flatheads and stuff had the intake and exhaust on the same side. You really have limited space, especially with a big turbo manifold. I do have a lot more space than if I top mounted the turbocharger, but that being said, there is still a space constraint. Plus, I still have to curve this manifold up. I want the intercooler to be as close to the ports as possible to benefit from that nice cool charge air. And I don't want to have it sitting up because the turbo's right there. It'll heat soak long runners, etc., etc., etc. So I have been working on this for quite some time, and I know it doesn't look like much, and I might end up scrapping this and redesigning the whole thing. But so far, this is kind of getting there. So it's not 100%. I still need to kind of angle this back up. But what I'm planning on doing is I'm probably gonna cut this down, put a flange on it, and then have another flange. But I'm gonna have to, before I cut that flange, so what I usually do is I will design the whole part and the whole transition in one piece, then I'll cut it, and then I'll put a flange on it. So then then you don't have to go back and try to mimic all of those fillets and stuff, because it is very hard to do that. So you can see in here, the ports and everything, it goes in and they're all separated, and you really won't have to worry about, well, I won't have to worry about each port's gonna have its nice cool charge air, which is going to be nice, and then everything's nice and CNC. One thing you have to worry about when you're designing something like this and you want to send it off to be machined, you have to make sure that they can actually get to the spots when they, so this is going to be 5-axised. You have to make sure that when this is bolted down to a fixture, that the drill or whatever cutting tool they're using can actually get the whole shape. So you can see there is plenty of room right there. I'm not gonna have any collisions or anything like that. And usually I'll run a few simulations before I send it off to be machined, just to make sure there isn't any interference, that they're gonna come back and be like, well, this was designed and it's gonna hit here and here and you have to redesign it. But you can see that there is plenty of room to get that. And this right here is going to be got when they do the back part of the port. So what I plan on having them do when they machine it is getting halfway up in here, and then when they flip it over and bolt it down, they'll have the ability to get all the rest of this stuff machined with the 5-axis, which will be really nice because the ports will flow really nice. They'll be direct, and I'm also going to do a few other things to this that I wasn't planning on doing. One of those is a fuel rail constraint that I have right here, because if you guys here, let me open the file, open recent. Okay, so now we kind of have a little bit, come on, there we go. Now we have a little bit better idea of what's going on here. So this is pretty much a 13B. Well, it is a 13B, it's in SolidWorks, but you can see that, you know, everything is just gonna, the 13B, it's the ports aren't right on the engine, but the ports are right on this intake manifold, and where it bolts right here is correct. So that's all I really have to worry about. But that being said, I need to fix that because I've never actually had a rotary all the way apart long enough to get all this stuff correct, and I haven't 3D scanned it. But that being said, it is a good reference, and you can see that what I'm going to have to end up doing is curving this back, because I want it to be very tucked over the engine. And another thing is that I'm not going to run the normal coils. I have coil on plug, so I'm going to have the coils over here. There won't be anything on top of the engine that I have to worry about. I'm doing an electric water pump. My turbo manifold will clear all this. I'm probably going to actually cut this down. I might bring this backside a little bit further up, 45 degree here, and then and then just have a flange and then have the intercooler core bolt to that, which might be more efficient. And I'm also gonna, like I said, I have this fuel rail constraint. It's not shown on here, but the primary rail goes about here. It actually sits very close to where this flange is. Actually, this is a little bit off because the rotor housing is a little bit wider. So it would actually kind of come over here, and the primary rail sits very close to right here. So what I'm gonna have to end up doing is, since I really don't want to stick the secondary rail with the injectors pointing all this way, because you have to worry about atomization and things like that. So what I may end up doing, I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to do it right now or do it at all, because it's going to be pretty insane. But a lot of the Formula One cars, a lot of high performance, high horsepower cars, if you can do it, putting the injectors inside the manifold is a very, very beneficial idea, because they are directly in the ports. These are the secondary injectors. So the good thing about those is they only open once this thing is getting into the upper RPMs. But with them being directly pointed at each port, the fuel is going to be just really atomized. It's going to go directly into the port. I mean, it's just going to be really, really good. That will eliminate me from having these fuel rail constraints over here. It will also mean that the fuel rail will have to go into the intake manifold, which then I have to design a fuel rail, and I have to make sure that everything's going to work, because this thing has to all bolt together. So like I said, I don't want to just keep, it's going to take me a little bit more thought to thoroughly think this out and think how I want to do it. There's so many aspects that I just need to figure out, and it's just very hard to do this in one video, since it has taken me like 5 hours to get to this part. I did design that K-series manifold. And that went pretty quick, because it's not, it's pretty easy. It's all pretty much just straight. There's a few bends here and there, but in taking an exhaust on different sides. This one, I'm having space constraints, and I have to wrap it around the engine, and I might not wrap it around as much as it should be, because I'm going to have that surge tank that I designed for the K-series. I'm going to use it on this with the 102mm LS throttle body. So that being said, I'm going to end the video here. If you do like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button. I know I don't do a lot of SolidWorks. It's because I don't think a lot of people are interested in it. I am pretty decent at it, I would say. It just takes a lot of time. Sometimes, things that SolidWorks doesn't, it's a program, it doesn't want to do certain things that you want it to do. How I want to envision something, I have a vision of it, I want it to do that. And to get it to do that, sometimes you have to go like this big long route around to get it there. So that's pretty much how these ports, they're just kind of a pain. Usually I could just go make 2 of them, just mirror them, and it's fine, but I didn't want to do that, so I had to make each one. It just adds up in time. So that being said, thanks for watching. Make sure you click the subscribe button, thumbs up, throw a comment below. I was really happy Hayden welded my manifold. It looks spot on. As always, see you guys next time.